Welcome to Percolating Change, the podcast where we brew better outcomes one sip at a time. My name's Alicia James, and my guest is Simone Eye. Simone is an accredited mediator and coaching psychology professional with over 25 years' experience in human resources, organisational development, and education. Simone works with individuals, teams, and organisations. And as an experienced leader, facilitator, and trainer and advisor, Simone provides clients with behavioural-based coaching and advice for achieving successful change and well-being and high performance in both their personal and professional environments. I'm delighted to have Simone on the podcast today. Simone, welcome.
Thank you, Alicia. Lovely to be here with you today.
Thank you. Now, Simone, this is such an exciting topic to unpack. What is your topic about today, and who would be our targeted audience for it?
So my area that I want to talk about today is about anxiety contagion and how anxiety as an emotion moves from individuals through the teams and then into organisations. It's an area that I first developed a love for of interest when I was finishing up my Masters of Science in Coaching Psychology from the University of Sydney. And as I've been working over the last few years, I've been honing this with more and more research about all of the psychological phenomena and behaviour and how that influences people in their organisational life and the teams.
That's excellent. So you developed a love for this. Can you just explore that a little bit more?
Yeah.
Because you said,
So, as you said, I've had this long career in HR and organisations, and working with people in a coaching way as well. But what I've seen and I saw was there's a whole side of what's going on in organisations which is behavioural. And what I really noticed, which I then went and I've delved in a lot deeper with a lot of research, is that when you have emotions, they come into an organisation or a project and they can really influence others. And we call that this ripple effect that can happen.
yes.
And anxiety and anxious behaviour can become so systemic in an organisation that it has the impact of everybody, not just how people are feeling, but how people are doing their work, what's being valued, and what's also then being tossed out.
Yeah. So it's that high anxious state can become quite contagious.
Absolutely. In an organisation, anxiety is the most contagious of all behaviours.
Yeah.
We'd like to think that positive emotion and positive behaviours are really easily caught, but in fact, anxiety, anxiousness is the most contagious, and it can also sit below the surface for people. So people can become unconsciously anxious from others without necessarily understanding why and what's happening. And then organisations can build whole systems around these anxious cultures. And in fact, I see these anxious cultures everywhere, particularly with clients that I work with.
Yeah. And I know you've got a framework that you're going to talk about. I'm fascinated by, because I'm trying to relive in my mind. I've been in an environment where, maybe your manager or a colleague comes in and it can be quite disruptive because of their manner or the way they engage. And before you know it, you're taking it personal. It's nothing to do with you. You're not even aware of why you're feeling the way you're feeling, but you know that something is amiss. Is that what we're speaking about here?
Well, I would call that early stage contagion.
Mm.
And, before you know it, when people start to become anxious, they start to do things to put in place that self-soothe. And if it's allowed to amplify in a negative way, then what happens, what you see in organisations is you see additional bureaucracy. There's lots of fear and stories that become built in, more and more policy and procedures, decision making that's raised up to higher and higher levels. And you get to see micromanagement coming down.
Yeah.
So decision making going up and then the micromanaging coming down. All of those are indicative of anxious systems and anxious leadership styles.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing. Do you have an example that you can, a real live example? No, I'm sure you do have a real live example. I know you do. What a silly question. Can you share a live, an example of this in play without giving names, etc.?
Yeah. So, really interestingly, I had an example only like a few weeks ago where a client came to me and they're exceedingly frustrated in a very large project. They themselves are a senior executive, except that decisions were then being put in place because someone was worried about we may overspend our budget. So all of the decisions regarding travel, as an example, even though they'd previously been approved, it was all being then pulled up to a senior executive level 3, so in the Australian Public Service. So it's a really, really senior deputy secretary of a department, and they were having to make decisions on things that are really significantly much lower. All of that's in a way to try and protect. It's to put in place these measures to, if we put more control around it, we'll feel safer, we'll feel more secure. All of those are indicative of anxiety. And it's really easy to pull it up in that hierarchical sense. What becomes really hard when you've got an anxious organisation is how to bring it back down, how to de-escalate the anxiety in an organisation in a way that people can manage, people can adapt to, and people can have the skills to be able to then manage all those decisions, the processes at the right level with a respect and a trusted environment.
Respect and trusted environment. So, Simone, to make this change, who would you be targeting? Is it a multi-layered approach in an organisation? How do you change that? Yeah.
So when, particularly, if you've got an organisation that's really gone past to that point where it's just become highly anxious, it becomes systemic. So when you have a systemic problem and it's behavioural, you can't rationalise a systemic emotional problem. You need to be able to look at it and understand what's going on with the emotion and then put strategies in place to unpack that. And one of the things that we look at is what is it? What are the fables versus what is the truth of what you actually need? And so starting to put in strategies of how do we de-escalate that anxiety. So I've developed out a framework.
Yes, please share that. Yeah.
That is called CALM. And this framework is actually, can be implemented on the individual level, on the team level, and on the organisational level, so that you can actually put it in place systemically across all areas. If I can talk to the individual level, it's easier to start there. And
yes, yeah.
So this model that I've developed actually comes from a theory in psychology that is very, very emotional theory. It's about how you deal with anxious behaviours, and it's under something people may know or heard of called dialectic behavioural therapy. But what I've done is I've taken the 4 pillars of DBT, and I've put them into a coaching psychology framework and methodology, and I'm calling it calm. So first C is about contextualizing. So when you're in this anxious environment and things are happening, how do you contextualize it? It's about stepping back. How do you step back and start to see what's actually going on in the system rather than just having an emotional reaction to something? That's about putting a space between the action that happens and your reaction to it. So you're making that a wider space.
Yeah.
Then we have the A, which is about attending. And so when you attend, what that means is you start to become aware of what's going on. You start to then be able to lean into the discomfort. Because when you're in an anxious environment, what everyone wants to do is self-soothe and be comfortable. And when you attend, it means being able to be uncomfortable in order to be able to start to see what's actually going on here. So we're still in lots of data collection. So we've taken some space. We start to go, okay, well, how do we actually look at that and feel uncomfortable so we can start to see what's going on? And then we can start to label and link. So you start to be able to actually call out what's going on. What are some of these behaviours? How do you link them together as an individual? And then the last bit, the M, it's about moving forward with intention. So how do you move forward? How do you actually act change to be very deliberate? In the dialectic behavioural therapy model, we actually call this wise mind. Wise mind sits between the emotional mind and the rational mind. It's this place in the middle. And the thing about wise mind is you bring together all of these things. You've looked at the system, you've stepped back, you've looked at what else is going on. You're then leaning into the discomfort. You're labeling and linking all the behaviours. And then from that, you're saying, let's make a change, let's move forward.
I like that. I like that. Calm. You may have a story that you could share around that, example story that you could share around that working in HR and change management.
So I see all the time with clients, like regularly, people are coming to me with the issues that they are facing as a leader. So as an individual, they'll often come and talk to me about something that's happened in the system, something that's happened in their work team or in their organisation. And they may feel really powerless in order to do something about it. And may actually also be stuck in a little bit of blame. So as an example, I've had where, people are like, well, if just that person over there would just do their work better, behave better, then everything would be okay. And that first bit of calm, that calm contextualizing is actually like, okay, what's actually step back? What's actually happening here in this whole team dynamic? What's happening with that person? What are they then doing? And then when you start to attend to that, you might actually start to say, I, as a leader, may have had a role in creating this person over there, maybe not doing their work that they're doing or having some conflicts that are happening. And then when you start to actually label and link it, you actually start to talk more specifically, well, actually, what are the behaviours I'm actually really seeing? So you've really kind of taken a balcony view, stepping into that. And then they actually get to that. It's like, well, what do I need to do to move forward? And it's usually to bring other people in, actions that you need to do and to look at to that.
Takes a lot of courage to do that, doesn't it?
It does take a lot of courage.
And I
but
like
if you're always reacting in an organisation and don't see the emotion and the emotional side, you always put Band-Aids on things and you just keep perpetuating these anxious behaviours and anxious cultures.
Yes, absolutely. I do like the fact that you need to take ownership. What have I done to contribute? contribute to that particular behaviour
Yep.
as a leader or whoever, whatever the role is, because often we all have a role to play.
Absolutely. And I see often in change and projects that people will come into these activities and sort of look at, well, this is a simple solution. If we just implement this new system or whatever the change is, everything will be fine. Everything will just work. There's a very big government department that I do a lot of work with, and they're doing big changes to bring this, like multiple systems, IT systems and HR, all these systems together. There's this great belief that if you just bring these systems together, everyone's going to start operating really functionally.
Really?
But when you've got all of these layers of anxious behaviours that have been set into the organisation, and you're put this new system in place that just kind of continues to encourage those things, whether it's the delegation levels of decision making still being really high, instead of actually part of that implementation stopping and saying, why are we having these senior people signing off on really essentially activities that team leaders and managers, if they know what their obligations are, they know what their budgets are, that's something for them to manage. You then design whatever those new systems are so that the decision making is being brought down to the right level.
Yeah.
So therefore, you've got all of those behaviours that are calming down.
Yeah. And, people pick up those fantastic systems that we build. So those systems are perfect. It's wonderful.
Absolutely.
It's just the people have actually got to use them and interact with them.
But I think until people start having the conversation, that also what they're noticing, and this is part of this, the L of labeling and link, what you're noticing are all these anxious behaviours, and then asking other people, what should we do to calm it down so that you can then put things in place that are at the right level, that give people agency and autonomy and the ability to do their jobs.
Incorporating that into the actual delivery part of it is what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah. And there's a lot more, I think, of the design of these systems. We forget in the design phase this huge behaviour and the memory and shadow when you already have an anxious organisation that's built this anxious culture, that when you design a new system, it's not just, well, let's just plonk it in and then everyone's just going to miraculously be calm. It's actually, what do you need to do to bring down those anxiety levels?
And it's not a lift and shift. Someone in an earlier podcast, there was an ERP project, was talking about looking at what you currently do now, what you don't want to take over. And I think this is a great point to talk about, those anxious behaviours and that anxious culture, to look at that at the same time, which possibly not being done as much as one would like to think.
I would agree with you. I see, and you do mention the ERP project, where the mapping of tasks and activities is being done as what can be more efficient. It's more efficient for us to do it in this way. But in fact, there's a history of anxiety of why it's being done the way it is now. And I hear a lot, and I've heard from a long time, and even yesterday I heard this from somebody I know of, but I'm going to have to go to Senate estimates and this week. But what am I going to say at Senate estimates? There's a fear and anxiety that's all built around Senate estimates. And then organisations have built all of these risks profiles, the levels of decision making in an attempt to deal with that anxiety of what might happen at Senate estimates at some point in the future. But actually what I see often is when they're doing that, they've built an anxious culture, which then becomes really challenging for the people in it to operate on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely correct. 100% correct. We could talk for ages on this, but we're sort of running out of time. Now, this is a new paper. Tell me if I'm correct. This is a paper that you have developed and you're working on, and you're going to be submitting it or have submitted. Can you just tell us a little bit about that? And then I want to be able to find out how people can get hold of you. And
So I've been working away since I graduated with my master's in 2023, and I became a graduate member and accepted into the Division of Coaching Psychology with the British Psych Society.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I am in the final stages of my submission for my chartered coaching psychologist status and registration. Part of that process is also doing publications and writing for the British Psych Society's journal called The Coaching Psychologist. And so this is research that's been taking me a couple of years, but I've pulled it together, and as you said, I've submitted it for the journal, and I'm waiting. It'll take a few months for peer review and the process for the journal editors, but I'm quite excited that and hopeful that it gets published.
Yes.
But it has been a labour of love for me, particularly as I've been looking at the difference when we look at anxiety from a clinical psychology perspective and instead put it into a coaching psychology perspective. So I've started posting some of my findings, some of my research on LinkedIn, and I'll be continuing to do that and put snippets of this paper up on LinkedIn until I'm hopeful that the paper will be published in about middle of the year.
Oh,
and then
fantastic.
I'll be able to release it in its entirety.
Oh, that's excellent. That's wonderful. I like the fact that you're going to be sharing some of those snippets on LinkedIn, because it is such an interesting topic that we need to know more about, so that we don't, in my mind, keep creating the same issues when we are upgrading into new and better systems, supposedly, that we look at this whole culture, anxious culture.
I'm also in the process of building a diagnostics tool for individuals and for teams and organisations to be able to assess the anxiety levels within an organisation.
When is that going to be ready, Simone?
That's a good question. I'm still building that out, and I've come across the joy of coding reports and doing that with a system. So, look,
right. So your early days. That sounds excellent.
8 months before I'm ready.
I love the idea of that.
Until it's automated, I have all of the details and the questions in paper form, in Excel spreadsheets. But of course, to be put into a proper diagnostics tool, it takes the coding to do that. So, but that's a work in progress.
Yes.
And I'll be working as I'm building on the concepts, putting that into a system and being able to then roll that out for organisations.
Thank you. That sounds exciting. I'm definitely interested in that, and definitely be reading your paper when it's published later on in the year. Thank you so much for joining. It's going to be so exciting to look at that diagnostic tool, and so that people keep abreast of where they are and make changes as they need to. That's going to be wonderful. And also when your paper comes out. And so I'll share all of that in the show notes when it comes out, March, April time when we launch season 2. And thank you for joining me. And if to those watching and listening, if you have liked today's episode, please like and subscribe, and follow Simone Eye if you want to keep up to date with what's happening in that space. Thank you so much.